Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. Yeah, so welcome to the presentation. We're from the alumni committee. So you may have heard of us, you may not have done. I didn't know about the alumni committee until I'd actually left Marrow, but there's a group of us, and we started doing some of these presentations last year for the online conferences, or I think they're called now. Yeah. And we've been asked to do them again this year. And so it's me, Eve, and Victoria is helping. And we can move on. So the reason, I'll just explain why we wanted to do a presentation, because obviously everyone knows that like Marrow is really useful. And I know when people are recruiting fellow volunteers, they always say, oh, like it will be really good for your CV or whatever, which everyone sort of knows is true, but then it can sometimes be hard to translate that to actually what you should be writing on your CV. So we wanted to make sure that even if you're not in your final year, even if you're a fresher or something, that you have the skills ready for when you're graduating, or maybe you're wanting to apply for an internship or something. So that's what this is hopefully going to help with.
Definitely. And what we're going to go through today is introductions. So let you know a little bit more about ourselves. Harry, we'd love to get to know a little bit more about you. And we'll come on to that. Then we're going to go through identifying your skills, so the skills that you currently have, and being able to articulate them better, so that future employers, you can identify them for any applications that you might have and know what future employers are looking for. Then we're going to go into top tips talking about Marrow on your CV. So sometimes the CV is obviously that first point of contact. And so now you hopefully will identify your skills. How can you then articulate them in the CV? And then hopefully, if you're in an interview situation, it's about how do you talk about Marrow there, and bring that to life, and also just some general interview top tips, even if you're not talking about Marrow. And then we've included a few contextual bits at the bottom, so at the end of the presentation. So the next bit will be about hybrid working. So when we did this similar course like presentation last year, it was about home working. Obviously now things have changed a little bit, and it's just about a few considerations for yourself and from a work perspective about things to consider now that we're going to this hybrid model of work from home and work in the office. And then finally, how can Anthony Nolan still be involved with you after university, and how can you help Anthony Nolan still after university as well?
Nice. So I think the first thing is introductions. Yeah, you could go first, Victoria, because you're on the.
So yeah, like I said, it's great, Harry, to hear that you're from Cardiff. I went to Cardiff Uni as well. Between 2012 and 2015, I did business management. And when I was there, I did various different roles on committee and was president in my final year. Currently chair on the Marrow Alumni Committee. So as Eve said, the Alumni Committee is there to represent anybody that wants to stay involved with Marrow and Anthony Nolan after they've left university. So we just hope to represent and be a key point of contact for anyone that still wants to stay involved and actively organise things and keep in touch with people. My job is I am an account manager, so that means I'm in sales at a company called Purina, which is like a pet food company. And in sales, like we sell to businesses and then obviously they sell to shoppers. So Amazon is my account, which at the moment you can probably imagine is keeping me quite busy. So yeah, Eve?
Yeah, and I'm Eve. I was studying in Scotland, so still the Celtic theme with Cardiff and Scotland, at St Andrews. And I graduated about a year and a half ago now, or is it? Yeah. And my role on the committee is it's called communications coordinator, but it's basically just all the like some of the social media stuff and the communications we have with the other alumni through like our newsletter and stuff like that. and I moved to Norway in January, and I'm actually a student again, but I still count as alumni because there's no Marrow group over here to join. And I'm doing a master's in international community health, it's called. So I'm still technically a student again now.
Amazing. So quickly over to you, Harry, if you would like to come off mute, or if not, pop in the chat. What year are you in? What are you studying? Anything you'd like to share with us? What's your role on committee? Would be great to know that.
Hi.
Hey.
So I'm final year of biochemistry right now. I'm fundraising coordinator.
Nice.
Cool. So this is probably really relevant as well, considering your final year.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And can I just ask a quick question? Have you like written any CVs before? Like, do you have one that you've already been working on, or are you sort of new to CV writing, stuff like that?
I've never done anything more than getting like summer jobs in shops and stuff.
Okay.
I've never written a university CV.
Yeah, that's fine.
Brilliant.
Cool.
Okay. So yeah, we'll go on to covering how you can identify the skills that you've got, particularly obviously from the stuff that you've done with Marrow. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so when we were putting this presentation together, like I said, it was about a year ago, last autumn. We tried to think of the key skills that companies are often looking for. And I did some Google searches like, oh, like top skills for employability or something. And even though there's loads of different organizations and different roles, the same key kind of words keep coming up. We tried to put a few on the screen here that you'll have obviously heard of before. But like often, I think on here it shows as well, often the kind of people-oriented skills rank really highly in companies. Even if you're not necessarily like customer facing or something like that, people really like others that can work with other people and things like that. And obviously we know Marrow is really good for that, because no Marrow is just sitting on their own recruiting people. But we were thinking like it may be easy to kind of find these lists of skills, and most people know that a company needs teamwork or leadership or something. But when it comes to proving that, it can sometimes be quite hard, especially with these more soft skills. There's no like exam that you can show that you've taken to show you're good at organization or something. And we knew that Marrow was like has a lot of these elements in it. So we wanted to kind of go more in depth and show how like you can take one skill or word and come up with a range of situations that reflect this that you may have had to face in Marrow. So maybe we could just discuss this in like off mute or something.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Harry, if you can think of any skills like off the top of your head that you may have gained through Marrow.
Definitely got more kind of like talking to the public speaking skills for doing like volunteer training and all the donor recruitments.
Yeah, so maybe like
really
confidence and stuff. Confidence from, yeah.
I guess like resilience of.
Yeah.
Is that really something? Yeah.
Oh, it's definitely something. Yeah. I think the resilience comes in so many things, but particularly at donor recruitment, when you might not be having as many people as you planned, or things don't go to plan, but you're still having to keep yourself motivated and any of the volunteers motivated as well.
Yeah. I guess.
And have you had to learn any like more core skills, like because you said you were a fundraising manager, so have you had to do any like accountancy stuff or anything like that, or is it more like soft skills you think you've got through Marrow?
I guess there's the like trying to deal with the money.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because there's the income expenditure thing. I'm struggling to really think of anything.
No, that's fine. That's what the workshop's to help you with. So like, don't be fretting about that. So shall we move to the next slide? Cool. So this was just like a mini quiz, but there's no wrong or right answers. But maybe you could just say like your gut instinct. So if you had to classify what skill you're most showing through hosting a committee meeting of 10, out of the 4 options on the screen, Harry, which of these do you think is like most shown by hosting a committee meeting?
Say A, leadership.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. That's what I thought most people would say. And then so the next one would be running a large scale fundraising event, which you may have had to do, although I guess with coronavirus, large scale events haven't been as possible. But which of the 4 options do you think is most reflected through that?
C.
And I think there's just one more. And then, like you said before, approaching a stranger at a donor recruitment event.
I'll go for A, perseverance.
And with these, would you say that like there's only one right answer, or do you think they can be shown, like, could you have chosen any answer is what I'm wondering. Are you thinking?
Yeah, so at least like 3 of them.
Yeah. So we tried to choose like examples that, especially the first one, I'll go back to that, like most people would have said that showed leadership, but we wanted to show that you can take a situation where you were hosting a committee meeting, and like maybe at first you'd think, well, it shows leadership, and like maybe you're not going for a leadership role, so you don't really need to show that. But we wanted to like spend a bit of time on each one, and that like I tried to think like, but what are the other skills that you have that may be like less obvious? So like delegation, you wouldn't necessarily first think of, or with the fundraising event, motivation maybe wouldn't be the first thing you'd think that you've shown. But I'm sure like especially through COVID, if you've been doing fundraising, any kind of stuff online, motivation is like actually like a really hard thing to have, and you definitely need it. So this like mini quiz was just to kind of get people thinking out the box a bit, and like obviously you have to have like financial management if it's a fundraising event, but there's also like a load of other skills that you also need, and it's the way that you can like sort of manipulate these situations that you've been in to show a range of skills. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So
brilliant. And one of the things that we'll do as well is this presentation will be available afterwards. And so as Eve said, using the sort of buzzwords that will come on to talk about how they're relevant afterwards can be good inspiration for when you're thinking of like your application, so that you can start thinking about, not that one thing that seems obvious, but also if that one thing that you did, what are all the other skills that you got from it that don't always spring to mind? And hopefully by us providing quite a few examples here, you can then sort of fit quite a lot of them to even just one situation. So it's not like you have to have done, every sign-up clinic and every committee meeting and everything like that. Obviously that's great if you do it from a Marrow perspective, but for an application, it's honing in on something that you've done and really describing that well, from a skills perspective, and identifying that so that it's more than just the title of like ran a fundraising event. Like people don't know whether that was, massive, or even if it was small, it might have been extremely difficult to execute, and things like that. So it's just giving that more detail to an employer. I think, and hopefully by us sharing this afterwards, you can have a look through it afterwards, so it might be helpful as well.
Yeah, and that's especially true of like skills that aren't, because most people don't know what a donor recruitment event looks like. So you have to sort of provide them with the skills, whereas most people do know what a committee meeting looks like. So maybe it's less important to like go through every step there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so
Great.
then, yeah.
Cool. So if we look at a real job description, so on quite a lot of job descriptions, that will talk about the actual role itself at the top. And then it will say about the skills that are required. And there are often technical skills like related to the job. So they might be things related to Excel or a specific, very specific skill to do with that job. But then there are other areas such as education, work experience, and holistic skills, where they will say essential and desirable. And so here is an excerpt from a real job description, which shows essential skills that this company are looking for. And as Eve said, when scanning lots of different sites for different job descriptions, this is quite relevant regardless of the field of work that you're sort of looking to go into, because these soft skills are needed in many different areas. So as you can see here, it's sort of exceptional organizational skills, confident personality and a can-do attitude, and then excellent written and oral communication skills with exceptional attention to detail. So out of those words that we've highlighted in blue, let's flip the exercise we've just done on its head. And Harry, can you tell us something that you have done that you think one of these skills represents?
The first one, trying to plan the year out and come up with like termly events to do.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and I think that's a really, really good example, because obviously it shows the organisation skills, but then when you're then talking about it, if you're in an interview situation, you can then also come on to like, it might allude to like the creativity that you've had behind it and really give the company prompts to sort of go off and really spell it out for them as well. So yeah, really good example, but I'm sure from what you said that you've probably got a lot of examples that can fit these things. So you mentioned about public speaking. It says here about excellent written and oral communication skills, confident personality and a can-do attitude. I think that's represented by you being on Marrow. And so sometimes it's just calling that out, that actually it's a volunteer thing that you've done whilst you've been at uni, and explaining that to the employer or writing it down in an explanation. But hopefully this is just reassuring you that when you are going to look for jobs, that Marrow is a really relevant example, as well as, like you said, you've had weekend jobs and things like that. Obviously they're really, really useful to include, but hopefully it can mean that Marrow can feature on your application in a really useful way as well.
Yeah, so then I think, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So the next thing we were gonna mention, can I ask, do you know what you might be planning on doing next year, Harry? Like, have you already, because you said you're doing biochem, right? I don't know if you've like chosen that you want to go into that field or if you're like more unsure.
Kind of deciding between going into research or teaching.
Oh, cool. Yeah, nice. So I guess that is kind of relevant for you then, because obviously some people know exactly what job they want to do. You maybe know like a lot of medics already that are in Marrow. So for them, they kind of already know what skills they're meant to be showing as doctors, and they know that Marrow hits those skills. But here we wanted to like reassure you that even if you don't actually yet know what career you want to go into, and it sounds like you've got like several options, which is really nice. like there's skills that cover kind of all jobs. So we've got like kind of a list here. So there's some skills that are quite specific to some jobs. So we've got like email marketing. So if people were the social media coordinator or something and they did the MailChimp, then that's obviously like a very specific skill that you wouldn't write about in some job interviews. But then you also like, so it's maybe good to write a list of the skills that you have that are really specific that could be useful for research, like you said, or for teaching, which maybe like teaching would be like talking to strangers or like making connections. But then there's obviously like the list that we put on here that like are more soft skills, like we mentioned before. So you kind of need two lists of your skills, one that is going to be just for certain career paths, and another one that you can just drag out every time you're applying to jobs, even if they're really different, like resilience, because everyone wants a resilient employee, whereas not everyone wants an employee that knows MailChimp or something. So yeah, that's what we wanted to like highlight in this section. And then this was a meme that someone else on the committee made for the presentation, which I thought was quite funny. And then I think it's the next section.
Yeah, so hopefully that's helped a little bit in terms of identifying the language around the skills and how you can choose the situation and then explain the skills from that situation. And as Eve just said, is choosing ones that are specifically relevant to what you're applying to, but then also just choosing general ones. So that's going to tie in really nicely with the next bit, is how do you then write that on a CV? So if we go on to the next one. So this meme is to try and exemplify the fact that we all love Marrow and know exactly what Marrow is and the ins and outs. But when you talk about it in a CV, and if you were just to put Marrow volunteer, people don't have a clue about what that might be. So it's really important to obviously explain what that is, like we put at the bottom of the meme, to sort of put that person in their place so that they know it's a brilliant thing that you've done. Because if they're not aware, it means that a really big achievement of yours and something that's great on the CV could be missed. So we have pulled together our top 5 tips for using Marrow on your CV, but these aren't exhaustive, and obviously there's lots of websites out there that can give like CV tips and structure of CVs. We're not going to cover that on this. What we're trying to do is make it really Marrow related, so that you can sort of tick that bit off when it comes to pulling your CV together. So if we go on to the first one.
Yeah, so the first one is to provoke conversation through your CV. So like Victoria said, almost like 99% of employees, I imagine, wouldn't know about Marrow. So instead of seeing that as like a negative of like, oh, like I've done all this thing, I've done all this volunteering, but no one's going to care, try and see it as a positive where you can like bring people in and like interest them, because if people haven't heard of it and they know you've spent so much time on it, that can be even more engaging for them. So what we've done is we've tried to take a CV from each of the alumni committee and just the section on Marrow that they've included in their CV, and we've tried to highlight the bits in here that like we think are really useful for other people to maybe kind of copy the structure of how they've spoken about Marrow. So for the first bit, we've said give a strong summary to provoke conversation. So this is someone that applied for data analytics, and she's given, we're all girls, so that doesn't give much away. She's given like her roles, but then she's also said a bit more about Anthony Nolan, because obviously it's also good to not assume that everyone who Anthony Nolan is either. And she's given some like impressive situations she's been in, but we wanted to highlight the point that this is actually her current company. When she gave her CV in, she had an interview, and I'm not sure how long the interview was, but she said they wanted to talk to her for 15 minutes just about Marrow. So and this is quite a small section in her CV, but they still spoke to her for 15 minutes. And also she got the job, which may not have been due to Marrow, but if they spoke to her that long about it, it obviously made a good impression. And I think so it's like important when you're doing your CV to like remember you'll have an interview hopefully later, and that you can like highlight pieces from it and kind of expand on it more, so you don't have to cram everything you've ever done in the short section. So then that's the first tip.
Great. Our second tip is to include statistics. So what we want to suggest is that you include your most impressive stats. So there's going to be a lot that you've achieved personally in your role on committee, but also don't forget what you've achieved as a whole committee for the time that you've been in Marrow. So this is one of the alumni committee that was applying for a job in the not-for-profit sector. And you can see the excerpt of their CV here that explains what they did when they were part of the Marrow Society, but also really putting clear numbers to it, because if people don't know, like Eve said, what it is, they don't understand what the impact you've done. So if you look at the first sentence, for example, responsible for reviving the committee, that bullet point could have just stopped there. But then when it says from 2 members to 10 members, it shows that it's a really good increase and a really sort of valuable thing that's happened. And then, as Eve said, when you hopefully can then talk about that in an interview, you can sort of say, well, with it being then 10 members, it means that I've left a legacy for the society to continue, because with 2, it's actually not possible that it might have carried on. It's really important, obviously, to have that. So you're giving away so much more than just that first bit, but it's saying exactly the same thing, but just articulating it better and giving the employer more context. And then, as you can see on the next bit, it says about increase the rate of recruitment by 300% in the first 3 months. So I think by being really numerical and specific also really shows the gravity of what you've done, but also that you're good with numbers. It's a given, obviously, that you know what you've done in it, but really putting some emphasis to it, because a lot of people can just write words about what they've done, etc. But really showing what you've done and how impressive that was, and quantifying it shows that you're quite number focused as well. And if that's relevant to the job, that's really important to put that in as well, to show that you articulate yourself in that way. So yeah, that's what we wanted to sort of say on this point, is remember to sort of quantify your achievements as well as explaining them with the skills that you've gained from it.
So that leads to tip 3, which is demonstrate long-term commitment. So this one is maybe a bit more relevant for like people that are applying to be doctors or something, because you may not know this, I didn't before, but they don't really have a normal CV. They just have to kind of list everything they've done, so they can't explain it that much. But someone on the committee is also a doctor, and she's managed to still show how involved she was with Marrow, even with just bullet points where she can't describe it. But you can see, because we've highlighted the 5 things she's managed to say about Marrow, and also the time spans. So you can see that she's been involved since 2014 to now, which is 2021. And you can't help but think that that's quite eye-catching for, especially as an employer who's a doctor, because they know that their students are busy. So that the fact that she's been able to carry on volunteering that whole time, I think is really impressive. But even if you're not applying for medicine, I think it's good to show long-term commitment, because a lot of people, I don't know if you did DOV, Harry, but I remember a lot of people wanted to suddenly volunteer because they had to volunteer for 6 weeks or something, which is fine, like it obviously does good, but if you can show that you're like passionate about a charity and you've chosen to stay volunteering with them, I think that's kind of more impressive. So it shows that you haven't just suddenly in the last month of your term before you try and get a job gone, oh God, I need to get something on my CV. So like, even if you've just been a committee member for 1 year, but you were volunteering before or something, it's always good to show the longevity of your volunteering within Marrow. Yeah,
definitely. And I think the thing I'd add to that as well is earlier on, when you are like creating your CV, you don't have as many examples, and they tend to be, like you said, shorter examples of like work experience before or different summer jobs, which by no means show a lack of commitment. You might be a very committed person, but it's just circumstantial of, you know, being at university and things like that. But actually, where you can show something longer, it really demonstrates that commitment that you can give to a job, to a future employer as well.
Yeah, that's good.
Great. So the next one is about making Marrow shine, as it should do. So I think this next one gives away a little bit who the CV might be, considering our introductions. But the tip here is, if you're short on space, really make Marrow shine. So think of really punchy way in which you can summarize it. So sometimes CVs have to be a certain length when you're applying for a certain area. Sometimes if they're done online, they have to be a certain length of characters. And sometimes it might be that you've got so much experience in a specific field, or it's been asked to fill out in a certain way, that actually additional things where you want to mention things like Marrow have to be shorter. So it gives it away. My CV and an excerpt from it shows that I was obviously president of Cardiff University Marrow, but it also says that I've obviously been a lifelong volunteer with the charity, and using sort of superlative words like extensive experience of public speaking at major events, fundraising, supporting a national community of volunteers. So it just shows the gravity of Anthony Nolan and Marrow. And despite the fact I didn't put, you know, numbers in there, because I could have put speaking at major events with X number of people, I was short on space. But it means that if I prepare well, if I got an interview, I can make sure that I can talk about that with numbers afterwards, about, oh, well, I've volunteered with them for 15 years and I've spoken at 7 events. All of them had over 50 people. These are just examples. But yeah, it's just saying you can still be really punchy and make an impact, and don't miss Marrow off at all, because there's always a little space to put about Marrow.
Yeah, especially because you never know who the people are that are reading. If they're a Marrow alumni too, you're definitely you're maybe more likely to get an interview slot.
Yeah.
So then that's just the last tip that we could come up with, and it's potentially, like, this is an idea for how you could present the CV section on Marrow, which would be dividing it into skills gained and achievements. So this is maybe relevant if the job that you're applying, because obviously you may choose to write your CV before you know what job you're applying to, and in that case maybe you'd want to just kind of list everything you've done. Whereas if you're applying to a specific job and you have the job description, you might want to think about including the actual skills that they're specifically asking for. So the person that wrote this CV did that, and they took the kind of list of, is it six skills that that the company said were really necessary, that you had to have. And she didn't just say, oh, I'm a good leader. She backed every single one up, which I think is very impressive. So it doesn't leave the potential employer guessing if you can do any of them. She's hit them with every bullet point they asked for. But then that doesn't always leave room for kind of the achievement side of things. So she then added another section where she can kind of show off about because obviously like you can say that you did, like you ran committee meetings, but then this shows that the committee meetings actually brought about big success for the group. And she happened to, well, not she happened to, her Marrow group were really impressive, and they won loads of rewards. So I think it's nice to include those too. So like if you have won any awards, but it doesn't need to be national. I know that sometimes universities choose like, oh, the best new society, or there's always some kind of things. And that's another point, actually. Make sure that you're putting your society forwards for awards like that, because they often like run a thing where you could get an award, or you could win £100 for the society. So like if you bear that in mind near the end of the year, then it's another thing to add on the CV that your committee has achieved.
Yeah.
Or another thing on that, I know that the person that wrote this mentioned that she thought her company used like an algorithm to search through all the potential CVs. So that's why she also wanted to include every skill that they asked for, because some companies apparently just search for the CVs, and if you didn't ever mention like leadership and communication and they ask for that, then your CV may be never read by a human. So that's quite good for like making sure if you think, if it's like a big company or something, maybe they have a lot of applications, then make sure you're hitting or addressing everything skill they ask for.
Definitely.
So I think that's the end of the tips.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Eve, about it being sort of automated. And like we said before, Harry, and I guess anyone else that's catching up and watching this, is we've added all this and the content in there. So please use it for inspiration when you're writing yours. Hopefully it can help, seeing some examples and talking through them as well. So next we're going to talk about and discuss how you can talk about Marrow at interviews. So just another little meme there about starting your career. So Harry, have you heard of the STAR technique before?
Never really known how to use it though.
No. Okay, cool. Well, I guess it's relevant for interviews in general, so hopefully this is super helpful. But the idea is to remember when you're answering a question in an interview, that you remember in your answer to structure the answer as STAR. So talk about the situation, so the context of the situation. What was the problem that you were solving, and like what was the task? What is the action? So how you used your initiative and problem solving skills, and then the result. So what happened as a result of your actions? And as we put in there, really brag about it, go for it, to really sort of show them over the top about what you've achieved through that. But the thing that STAR really helps with, and we'll go through a Marrow example, is staying calm and controlled in the interview, but also making sure that you get everything across really clearly. Because if you don't think STAR, it means that you can start to wonder in your answers, go over time, not articulate yourself as best as possible, and also use like lots of filler words and start to get a little bit nervous in case you lose the point of what you're trying to talk about. Whereas if you always think of STAR and always pause and really take in the question that they've asked you, then it should set you up really well for interviews. So if you click on to the next one, Eve, we have got an example that one of the committees kindly shared with us about how they would answer a question. So they might say to you a really general question. So talk to me about something that you've done whilst you're at university. Or it might be, talk to me about a time that you've led a team. And so those are so vague, and you could easily then just go off, oh, well, I led a team. I play football, I volunteer for Marrow, and like if you don't have that structure, it can sort of not come across that well. Whereas if you think about using STAR, got a really good example here. So the situation was, well, whilst I was at university, I was elected as the donor recruitment coordinator for Bath Marrow Committee, which is a student branch of the blood cancer charity Anthony Nolan. So it's super clear to them what it is and the context of where you were. So what did you do? Well, in order to respond to the challenge of signing students up in a virtual setting due to the pandemic, we created a virtual March of the Men campaign. So they know that that's great, supporting the charity, and they've got the context of that it was virtual. So the action was that creating a virtual life-saving leaderboard. We encourage male sports societies to sign up to the Anthony Nolan Stem Cell Register by holding a series of online recruitment events and Instagram takeovers. And then the result of that was, happily, our new campaign was highly successful, and we signed up 50 potential lifesavers to the register in 1 week. So if you can imagine, I think this comes across really well. And obviously we've written this down, so it's hopefully sort of textbook. But when you are thinking of how you would answer in a situation, these are the types of things in the structure you can talk through, and just think STAR in your head. So I guess, Harry, yours would be, whilst I was at university, or if it's a during, while I'm at university, I am fundraising coordinator for Cardiff Marrow Committee, and then you could use a student branch of the blood cancer charity Anthony Nolan. And then you could talk about a specific task that you've done, and then how you did it, and then the result of that. Is that clearer?
Yeah, thank you.
Do you think it would be really helpful and useful?
Yeah, it's good to kind of think about to structure the answers.
Yeah, definitely. And if you click on to the next one, Eve, I think we would encourage you, we normally do it obviously like in the moment when there's loads of people here, but like after this, have a little think about your own like STAR answer. So create a question, maybe, so talk to me about a time you've organised something, could be the question. And then just maybe write down the STAR answer that you would give, or just talk it out loud after this. We won't make you do it sort of in front of us, but I think it's just a really good exercise to try and do and to try and get used to. If we go on to the next one, a top tip that we would really give to you is about practicing. And so it's up to you how comfortable you feel. But one of the things that we've discussed as committee is either just practicing to yourself, so like in your room, and just actually speaking it out aloud is so different to like writing it down and preparing it, because when you write it down, naturally you are a lot more formal about things. And, you know, like that example we gave, you probably wouldn't speak like that. But the other suggestion that we had is, if you feel comfortable, and I'm sure housemates might appreciate it as well, is to practice with housemates. So housemates could sort of say, or other committee members could say, okay, we know you've got an interview coming up, or we're all going into sort of job application time. Let's all talk about in one of the committee meetings and do like a little STAR practice or something. We think just the essence here is just really practice this technique so that you're not doing it for the first time in an interview. And again, don't just use it just for Marrow, use it for when you're answering anything, and keep the STAR structure in your head. But obviously you don't have to say, the situation was this, the task was this. I think that goes without saying, but those are our top tips, I guess we'd say, for you guys.
Yeah, so then the penultimate section, I guess it is relevant because you're your final year, so you'll be coming up to graduating soon. It's just a bit about hybrid working, like Victoria mentioned at the start.
So have you heard of the phrase hybrid working?
No.
Yeah, okay, good. Because yeah, I guess it was all sort of, the focus last year was about work from home, but now companies are looking at, well, how can we work from home but also work in the office? And we've just written down a few considerations and tips for you to either ask in the interview, so that you know more for yourself about what you might be working with, but also key considerations for like what you want out of a job. So in terms of the first point, so what's the expectation to be in the office? So if you want to start at a company where you are in the office all the time, this is a really good question to ask or to look for online, because you might be a really sociable person and want that environment when you're first starting out in work. But say, for example, you want to live somewhere, or you do live somewhere that's actually quite far away from the office, and they are supporting hybrid working, or they're supporting working from home. Actually, that makes your options even broader than they might have been a couple of years ago. So really look into that in terms of your considerations when you're looking at jobs, and also when you're in the interview or talking to recruiters. The next point we would give as a top tip is about, has the company been able to adapt to the pandemic financially? So what is their financial situation, and is the industry in which you're sort of potentially going into going to be secure because of what's happened from the pandemic? I guess the fields that you're looking into definitely are, but like you said, if you end up going into teaching, then potentially a lot has changed from then, and the culture there, which comes on to the next bit, might be really different, and a really big consideration that you might have. So the culture of the workplace will really change if it's a hybrid model, and so just understanding that and thinking, is that a place where I'd like to work, and are these people that I'd like to work with, is really important. Getting to know your colleagues will be so different depending on the work situation, if it's all in the office, if it's all work from home, or if it's a bit of both. Starting virtually, if it is a bit of both, can sometimes be difficult, so really be cognizant of how you might get to know your colleagues so that you feel really comfortable in the working environment. If socials are something that are really important to you, which they often are for quite a lot of people, is they might be virtual or adapted socials, but you can ask that in interviews or when you're looking at jobs, is you know, what social clubs are there, because lots of employers offer extra clubs, a bit like at university and things like that, like sports clubs, etc. And you can get a really good vibe about a company from that as well. One thing we would say is definitely embrace the benefits. So going to the hybrid model just has thrown sort of everything upside down. So make the benefits of this work for you. And the thing we would just say is, if it makes you feel a little bit nervous about working remotely and hybrid working, the reassurance here is that you've actually already aced this, because the fact that you're a third year and you've done a whole year of Marrow virtually, you've probably done a whole year or part of the year virtually of uni virtually as well, means that you're really gonna be fine and have already aced this sort of weirdness of life right now. So hopefully that gives you confidence when looking at what the workplace might be like when you're applying for jobs.
Yeah, and then the last section we just wanted to quickly cover, it's not that long, is how Anti-Nolan can help you after university. So that's both how you can stay involved, but also like a few things you can gain from Anti-Nolan still. So the first is, we really encourage you to use LinkedIn. Have you got a profile at all, Harry?
No, don't know. So
I would recommend getting it now, because if you wait until you graduate to make your LinkedIn, you don't have as many contacts at first. Whereas when you're at university, this is how I found anyway, everyone was just adding everyone just so they had loads of connections, which obviously like may not be that useful, but Marrow connections are especially useful, because some of those people you may have volunteered with and like you liked them, but you wouldn't stay in contact with them. But then say 3 years down the line, they're working for a company in London and you want to move to London. There's someone that you could message on LinkedIn, and you might not know them well enough to message on Facebook or something. It seems maybe a bit personal. Whereas I think it's a bit more normal on LinkedIn to kind of reach out to people that like are acquaintances, or even you've not met, but you know through someone else. And the other thing to mention there is you can actually endorse skills I don't know how much people look at that, but like your other Marrow volunteers can like endorse your skills and say, oh, they are really good at communication or something. And I just showed like, this is the top of my CV. You can actually put a link to your LinkedIn, because like Victoria was saying, often there is like a word limit, or at least they say one side. Whereas with the online applications, they can just click on your LinkedIn if they're feeling a bit nosy, especially with something like Marrow where they don't know much about it. And you could just write a bit more on your LinkedIn. So it's sort of like another feather to your hat.
Definitely. And this is a little plug as well. So really relevant that you're in third year as well, is to join the Marrow alumni community groups. So we have a Facebook group, if you search what it says there, and also a LinkedIn group. And the thing to be aware of is the Facebook group is a great way to stay in touch with old Marrowers and hear about what's going on. But the LinkedIn is a way to connect like professionally, like Eve said, and also jobs are posted on there. So if people in their companies that are Marrow alumni in all different fields have jobs coming up, they have shared like their job board on there, and also Anthony Nolan share a lot of the job opportunities on there. So I'd say definitely join these community groups, and also share it with anyone that's in your committee, that's in any year at university, because I think they can be really helpful as well.
And then the last thing that Auntie Nolan can give back to you is sometimes people decide not to write their CV for a few years, or maybe they do a master's and they move away or something, so they kind of lose the evidence of being involved with Marrow. So you could do this now, or you could do it 10 years down the line if you need to make an application. Anthony Nolan will always give you proof that you volunteered with them. You can email alumni at UK, the email there, or you can just message the alumni Facebook page. You could message, is it Marrow team on Instagram? Basically anyone like Marrow, Auntie Nolan related would be able to help you out. And that's important because for a lot of jobs, they ask for proof that you actually did it. And Auntie Nolan just wanted you to know that even if it is 5 years later and you think no one will remember you, they can even look up on the system for you how many donors you recruited when you're on the committee and stuff, which is a really nice extra thing to include. So then I mentioned, so I said I graduated a year and a half ago. So then this is a photo of the letter I received, and it says how many donors I recruited and how much money we raised, which wasn't that much. But you can, if you do receive one of these this year, it was just as a tip to hold on to it, because that's the kind of thing you could photocopy and use it later along the line in like a portfolio job application, and to include in your CV, because, well, I could remember 222 donors, but if it's a less easy to remember number, so yeah, it's just to like say, don't forget about Auntie Nolan when you graduate, because for starters, you can still be involved, but also they'll always be there for you because they want you to be able to get good jobs and stuff like that.
Perfect. Are you going to any of the in-person conferences, Harry?
Yeah, I'll be at the South one.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So yeah, I'll be at the South one as well. So we're running in like when you have optional workshops, we're running a leadership workshop there. So if you're interested, well, I'll definitely meet you there at the South one. But also feel free to come along to the leadership workshop, which hopefully will be really interesting. But if you don't want to come, do let any of the other guys in your committee know that we'll be doing the leadership workshop as well. A chance to meet more of the alumni team. Cool, and that's it. We just wanted to give you a chance to ask any questions that you might have.
No, I don't think I have anything. Thank you.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for attending. I hope you found it useful.
Sorry, we
Yeah,
had to keep making you on mute.
Yeah, thank you for attending. And if anyone's watching this back, hope you found it useful as well. Feel free to reach out to myself and Eve, or on any of the Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn, like we said. Yeah, Eve, I don't know if there's anything else to cover.
No, that's good. Yeah, thank you, Harry, for coming. And yeah, you can always reach out to us for questions. And I think we'll try and distribute this PowerPoint via Anti-Nolan team, because I think it would be useful for people to maybe go back in a year's time when you're applying for jobs, because you can almost copy some people's format of how they've described like a branch of Anti-Nolan and stuff like that. So don't be afraid to copy the formats and stuff if that's useful. But yeah, thank you for coming, and we hope it was interesting and useful.
Thank you.